The urban legends of Nikola Tesla. Is it a real possibility or just a figment of humanity's imagination? A mere urban legend? Is this rumor ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? Tonight, once again, we'll examine whether it's true or not from a Japanese perspective. Episode: The Urban Legends of Nikola Tesla. On the morning of January 7th, 1943, a maid at the Hotel New Yorker knocked on the door of room 3327 and no answer. She entered anyway, against the explicit standing instructions of the room's occupant, a man who had lived there alone for 10 years, who had requested that no one enter under any circumstances, who hadn't been seen in days. She found him dead in his bed, within hours, before his body had even been removed. Agents from the Office of Alien Property arrived at the hotel and seized everything in the room. Every paper, every notebook, every file. J. Edgar Hoover was personally notified. He classified the confiscated materials as top secret. That a man the government had largely ignored for 2 decades was, within hours of his death, the subject of a federal seizure operation that moved with military precision. What were they looking for? What did they find? And why? More than 80 years later, are significant portions of what was taken from that hotel room still classified? This is the story of Nikola Tesla. And the parts you haven't been told are the parts that matter most. Part 1. Introduction. Every generation produces scientists. Very rarely, history produces someone whose understanding of the physical world is so far ahead of everyone else that the gap between what they know and what anyone else can comprehend becomes, in itself, a kind of tragedy. Tesla was that person. That he holds over 300 patents. He gave the world alternating current, the electrical system that powers virtually every building on Earth. He designed the first hydroelectric plant at Niagara Falls. He demonstrated wireless power transmission decades before mainstream science took it seriously. He described principles of radar, robotics, and global wireless communication that other scientists independently developed years after his death. He did all of this while being systematically discredited, financially destroyed, and ultimately erased from the standard historical narrative. That erasure is documented. It is not conspiracy, it is history. But Tesla's story doesn't end with injustice. It ends with a mystery, several of them. And the deepest ones, surrounding the work seized from that hotel room, have never been resolved. What did Nikola Tesla actually figure out? And who decided the rest of us weren't allowed to know? Part 2. Background. Nikola Tesla was born on July 10, 1856, in what is now Serbia, during a lightning storm. That he showed extraordinary ability from childhood. He memorized entire books. He ran complex calculus in his head. He visualized mechanical systems with such precision that he claimed he could operate imaginary machines mentally for days, then inspect them for wear on the parts, before committing a single line to papered at age 26. During a walk in a Budapest park at sunset, he experienced a sudden and complete visualization of the rotating magnetic field, the principle that would become the foundation of AC motor technology. Not a partial idea, not a rough concept. The entire mechanism, fully formed, in his mind. That he saw the thing that would electrify the planet before he had the resources to build it. In 1884, he arrived in America with 4 cents in his pocket and a letter of introduction addressed to Thomas Edison. Part 3. The complete story. Edison and the war that shaped everything. Tesla went to work for Edison almost immediately. Edison also recognized that Tesla's alternating current system was a direct threat to the DC electrical infrastructure Edison had already sold to investors and cities across the country. Edison allegedly promised Tesla $50,000 to redesign his DC motors. Tesla worked for months, completed the redesign, and asked for the money. Edison reportedly laughed and told him he didn't understand American humor. Tesla quit. He spent that winter digging ditches to survive. What followed became known as the War of Currents, a deliberate campaign by Edison's organization to destroy AC Power's reputation. Edison publicly electrocuted animals with AC current to prove it was lethal. He lobbied, successfully, for AC power to be used in the electric chair, a move specifically designed to link Tesla's technology to execution in the public mind. It didn't work forever. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago changed everything. Tesla and his financial backer George Westinghouse illuminated the entire exposition with AC power. Hundreds of thousands of people saw a city lit by electrical light for the first time in their lives. AC-1. The future Tesla had seen in that Budapest park became reality, and Tesla should have become the most celebrated man in America. Instead, the story took a different turn. Colorado Springs. The night he heard something by the late 1890s, Tesla had moved beyond AC motors. He was working on something he believed was more significant than all of it combined. The wireless transmission of electrical power. Not wireless communication. Wireless power. Electricity transmitted through the Earth itself, receivable anywhere on the planet without infrastructure of any kind. In 1899, he built an experimental station in Colorado Springs. His laboratory contained a resonant transformer of extraordinary scale, capable of producing artificial lightning bolts over 100 feet long. During his experiments, locals reported light bulbs glowing in homes miles away with no connection to any power source. Horses in nearby stables received shocks through their metal shoes from the ground beneath them. He was transmitting power through the earth, and it was working. Then, one night, Tesla claimed he received a rhythmic, patterned signal through his equipment that he could not attribute to any known terrestrial source. Regular, organized, clearly artificial in its structure. He wrote in his journal that he believed he had received a transmission from another planet. His critics used this claim to begin the process of discrediting him. But here is the thing. He heard something. What it was has never been established. And the equipment he was using, sensitive enough to detect signals transmitted through the Earth's own crust, was more capable of receiving anomalous transmissions than anything else that existed on the planet at that time. That he heard something. And nobody has ever told us what it was. Wardenclyffe, the system that would have changed everything in 1901. Backed by financier J.P. Morgan, Tesla began construction on Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, a 187-foot structure designed as the first node of a global wireless power transmission system. But Tesla's vision went further than power. In private correspondence, he described a system that would transmit information, text, images, voice, to any receiving device on the planet. A global communications network, accessible to anyone. Free. In 1901, Nikola Tesla was designing the internet. Morgan pulled the funding in 1904. The official reason was that Marconi had beaten Tesla to the wireless communication patent, a claim later overturned by the Supreme Court in Tesla's favor in 1943. The same year he died, but the real reason is obvious in retrospect. Tesla was building a system that would transmit power and information freely to anyone on Earth. There was no mechanism to meter it, no mechanism to charge for access, no mechanism to control who received it. You cannot build a monopoly on free. Morgan understood this immediately. And without his money, Wardenclyffe was eventually demolished for scrap. The world Tesla was building, where energy and information were treated as public utilities, available to everyone, died with that tower. 1931, the black box now. This is the moment that changes the story. In 1931, in Buffalo, New York, Tesla allegedly demonstrated a modified Pierce Arrow automobile. According to multiple witnesses present, the car's gasoline engine had been removed and replaced with an AC electric motor. The motor was powered by a small black box, approximately 24 inches long, 12 inches wide, that Tesla described as a receiver. The car reportedly drove for 50 miles at speeds up to 90 miles per hour. No fuel, no battery in any conventional sense, no external power connection. Tesla told the people present that the device was drawing power from the surrounding medium. From the environment itself, if this demonstration occurred as described, the device represents an energy extraction mechanism that is inconsistent with thermodynamics as currently understood. Tesla never published the specifications. No patent was filed. The black box disappeared after the demonstration. No physical evidence has ever been produced, but the witness accounts have never been successfully disproven either. And here is the question that won't go away. If it was impossible, why does it matter? Why do the accounts persist? Why, decades later, would multiple witnesses independently describe the same demonstration in the same detail? People don't consistently misremember the impossible. They remember what they saw. 1934. The weapon nobody wanted. In July 1934, the New York Times published Tesla's description of a weapon he claimed to have developed. A focused beam of concentrated particles, capable of projecting over 250 miles, sufficient to bring down aircraft and destroy armies. That he called it a peace ray, arguing that a weapon of such power would make warfare obsolete by making any attacks suicidal. He offered it to the U.S. government. They passed. He offered it to multiple foreign governments. He reportedly sent technical specifications to the British, the Soviets, and others. After his death, when his papers were inventoried, the specifications for the particle beam weapon were incomplete. Critical sections were missing from the papers of a man who died alone in a hotel room. A man who owned almost nothing. Someone had taken them before the government arrived, or during the seizure itself, or in the gap between those two moments. The Teleforce specifications have never been publicly found. January 7th, 1943. The room, which brings us back to where we started. Tesla's nephew, Sava Kasanovic, arrived at the Hotel New Yorker after the government agents had already been through the room. He later stated that he believed papers had been removed that were not included in the official inventory of seized materials. The seized materials were eventually reviewed by a team that included John G. Trump, a distinguished MIT electrical engineer and, notably, the uncle of Donald Trump. Trump's official assessment concluded that Tesla's papers contained no real threat to national security. But that assessment was conducted on the papers that were made available to the review team. Nobody has officially accounted for what was in the papers that weren't. The assessment says what it says about what was assessed. It says nothing about what was missing before the assessment began. Part 4. Theories. The suppressed technology theory, the most documentable explanation. Tesla had developed practical applications of physical principles that would have been catastrophically disruptive to existing energy industries. Wireless power transmission is not physically impossible. Tesla demonstrated it. The reason it was not developed was economic, not scientific. Morgan didn't sabotage Wardenclyffe out of malice. He did it because the economics were clear. A free global power system destroys the business model of every metered energy company on Earth. What this theory cannot explain is the government's specific, rapid, classified response to his death. You don't classify the notebooks of a discredited elderly inventor for economic competition reasons. Classification implies something that poses a different category of concern. The zero-point energy theory. Zero-point energy, the residual energy present in quantum systems even at absolute zero, is not a fringe concept. It is experimentally verified. The Casimir effect proves it exists. The debate among physicists is not whether this energy is real, it is. The debate is whether it can be extracted in usable quantities. Tesla, who described his later work as drawing energy from the surrounding medium, would be describing, in modern terminology, zero-point energy extraction. The black box, if real, would be the first practical demonstration of a technology that mainstream physics currently considers impossible. And the history of physics is substantially a history of mainstream physics being wrong about what's impossible. The psychological theory. Tesla's later years are documented to have included behaviors consistent with severe OCD, social isolation, and possibly psychosis. His phobias were well documented. His descriptions of his later inventions, including the Colorado Springs signal and the free energy receiver, may reflect a mind that had spent decades in isolated, obsessive focus and lost, in the process, the calibration between insight and ideation. This is a legitimate framework for the later claims. It does not explain the government's response. You do not classify the papers of a brilliant but unmoored eccentric. You donate them to a museum. The classification implies contents. The question remains what? The conspiracy theory about Tesla requires no elaborate machinery. It requires only this: the U.S. government, in wartime, seized the papers of a man who had spent decades describing weapons, energy systems, and communication technologies of revolutionary potential. And what those papers contained was significant enough to classify at the highest level and to maintain that classification for 80 years that we know the seizure happened. We know the classification happened. We know the MIT assessment was conducted on incomplete materials. We know the Teleforce specifications are not in the released record. The conspiracy theory about Nikola Tesla is simply that the government took something and kept it. The documented behavior of the government after his death does not suggest that theory is wrong. Part 5. Deep analysis: 3 specific contradictions that don't resolve cleanly. First, the assessment problem. Trump's MIT review concluded Tesla's papers were not a national security threat. This is cited constantly as evidence that the Tesla mystery is overblown. But the review only covers what was reviewed. Kosanovic's objection that the inventory was incomplete is in the historical record, filed formally, and never adequately answered. The assessment's conclusion cannot speak to materials that weren't there. Second, the Teleforce gap. A man who spent a decade trying to sell a particle beam weapon to multiple foreign governments would have kept copies of the specifications. The documentation of his attempts to sell it exists. The specifications themselves do not appear in any released material. Something that should be there isn't. That is not ambiguity. That is a specific, identifiable absence. Third, the Nobel Prize that wasn't. In 1915, news wires reported that Tesla and Edison would share the Nobel Prize in physics. The prize that year went to the Bragg family instead. No official explanation was ever provided for the discrepancy between the reported announcement and the actual award. Both Tesla and Edison denied refusing it. The Nobel Committee's records from that period are not fully public. The man whose work forms the literal foundation of modern electrical infrastructure died without the field's highest recognition, and the circumstances surrounding his near miss with that recognition have never been fully explained. Part 6. Modern implications: the relevance of Tesla's story is not nostalgic. It is immediate. Wireless power transmission, once a fringe topic, is now mainstream engineering. MIT spin-off Witricity is developing practical wireless power systems. NASA has proposed orbital solar power satellites that would beam energy to Earth via microwave transmission. The concept Tesla built Wardenclyffe to demonstrate is no longer considered physically controversial. The question is now purely one of efficiency. Tesla's project was killed in 1904. The mainstream development of the technology he was demonstrating was delayed by approximately a century. That is not hyperbole. That is what the timeline shows. The global dependence on fossil fuels, with all of its geopolitical, environmental, and economic consequences, is partly a downstream consequence of J.P. Morgan pulling funding from Wardenclyffe Tower because he couldn't figure out how to put a meter on it. That is the scale of what was lost. And the classified materials from room 3327 represent the possibility that there is a second chapter to that loss. Ideas that were developed, documented, and then removed from public scientific access before anyone outside a small circle of federal agents could evaluate them. Ideas that may still be sitting in a file. Classified. Waiting. Part 7. The final question: Tesla died alone. The man who electrified the world, who gave it AC power, the radio, the foundations of wireless communication, died in a single hotel room with no family, no fortune, and no recognition from the institutions whose existence his work had made possible. Within hours, the government was in his room. Within months, the Supreme Court confirmed he had been right all along about the invention that had defined his life, that he was right. He had been right the entire time. And the system that marginalized him and let him die in poverty confirmed it only after he was gone. The documents from room 3327 remain, in significant part, beyond public access. FOIA requests related to Tesla's files have produced releases, but researchers who have reviewed those releases consistently note they represent an incomplete picture of what the initial inventory described as present. Something is missing. Something has been missing for more than 80 years. In his final interview, days before his death, Tesla said he had completed a discovery more important than anything in his previous career. A principle, he said, that would fundamentally alter the relationship between human civilization and the energy of the universe itself. He died before describing it in any detail that was ever released. So here is what I want to leave you with. Nikola Tesla gave the world the electricity it runs on. He died broke, alone, and classified. And the papers seized from his room, the ones that made J. Edgar Hoover pick up the phone personally, have never been fully accounted for. What did he know that we still don't? And who decided the rest of us weren't allowed to find out? Let me know in the comments. This has been ULW Radio. We'll see you in the next legend.